Forrest Gump stars Tom Hanks and Sally Field. The film was based on a 1986 book written by Winston Groom and was directed by Robert Zemeckis. The film was released in 1994, at the time had great critical and financial success, winning 6 Academy Awards. The film had a budget of $55 million and grossed over $329 million. Thomas Byers, 1996, and others have labelled the film as being an aggressively conservative film. Some conservatives see the film as an attack on the 1960s counterculture. I argue that for the commercial success the film generated, it must have appealed to more than just conservatives. I argue that the film had mass appeal because controversial scenes from American history were actually neutralized. The essay will investigate the techniques the director may have used to navigate the problem of using real-life political events in film. If your aim in a film is to tell a story and not to promote a political side, how you incorporate the story is very important. It is my belief that the director, Robert Zemeckis, and the main star of the film, Tom Hanks, were very aware of the potential to cause offence to segments of the viewing public if they did not make the correct decisions on how to film these scenes. At a New York Live event, Hanks recalls asking Zemeckis if anybody would care about the movie. The director replied that it is a minefield and that they may be sowing the seeds of their own destruction. Philip Gianos, in his book Politics and Politicians in American Film, 1998, asks this very problem. How do you incorporate real-life political events without making the audience angry? So why does this film have elements that make people believe it is promoting conservative values? Firstly, we can look at some basic observations before doing a deeper dive into some of the actions within the scenes. Initially, we have the main character, Forrest Gump. He is a classic symbol for a conservative audience to latch onto. He has a smart traditional look with short back and sides and a neat pleats in his trousers. He is a good old Christian boy and donates some of his wealth to the church. He was willing to give his life for his country by enlisting in the army and going to fight in Vietnam. There is a scene where Forrest picks up his check having made millions on the stock exchange, reinforcing the conservative values of capitalism and the free markets. In this funny scene, he's also praised as being a genius, simply by doing exactly what he is told. Could this be suggesting you will be rewarded in life and seen as a bright human, simply for doing what you are told, following the line and not asking any questions?
Go! What's your sole purpose in this army?
To do whatever you tell me, drill sergeant.
God damn it, Gump! You're a goddamn genius. That's the most outstanding answer I've ever heard. You must have a goddamn IQ of 160. You are goddamn gifted, Private Gump.
Those were a few basic observations. So let's look a bit deeper at the analysis of some scenes that have suggested there is an attack on the counterculture movements.
Jenny!
A quote by Victor Fan, 2008, states that during the March on Washington scene, the ability of Jenny's voice to transform Forrest from a voiceless messenger from the war to a countercultural hero in front of the protesters seems to suggest that the countercultural movement itself is nothing but an empty message.
It was the happiest moment of my life.
In another scene, Forrest punches Wesley and knocks over a poster of the Defiant Fist. To paraphrase Robert Burgoyne, 1997, he suggests that this is symbolic. Wesley, the bad character, is taken down, and Forrest also takes down the poster, taking the power from the people and punishes the countercultural movement.
We are here to offer protection and help for all those who need our help. Because we, the Black Panthers, are against the war in Vietnam. Yes, we are against any war where black soldiers are sent to the front line to die for a country that hates them. An imperial dog act.
In an article in the magazine Philosophy Now 2011, Terry Murray states that the right-wingers in America lauded the film as a thinly veiled assault on the counterculture, arriving at an astonishingly simplistic interpretation of the film. Jenny, Forrest's sweetheart, took drugs, hung out with anti-Vietnam types, and was rewarded with AIDS. By contrast, Forrest wore his country's uniform, invested wisely, went to church, and made a mint. In the article, Terry Murray also goes on to say the liberal elite delivered the resounding verdict that there was no serious moral to the story. The essay is now going to argue that the director took steps to neutralize these political controversies that took place in the film. For instance, the Watergate scandal does not show the Republican government of that time in good light, and to add salt to the conservative wounds, in the film it was the actions of an idiot that brought about the resignation of the president. The director used humour to water down, pun intended, any strong feelings and neutralize the scene from having any bias towards a political point of view.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
When Forrest receives his medal, he shows the president the bullet wound on his buttocks. This could be read as a moon to the president and a moon to serving in the war. That was not the intention of the director. Again, the act of bringing humour and fiction into a factual event turns the factual event into fiction.
In the buttocks, sir.
Oh, that must be a sight. I'd kind of like to see that.
Vivian Subject, 2008, implies this when they say, by digitally inserting its fictional hero into documentary news and real footage and into an interactive relation with real historical events and personages, Forrest Gump conflates and confuses the fictional with the historically real. There are many more occurrences in the film where the historical fact becomes blurred as fiction. For example, Wallace on the steps of the university trying to stop black students from registering on courses. You see Forrest's face pop up in the background and walk into the main scene to pick up a dropped item. I believe John Harriman, 2018, backs up this idea of neutralizing the historical fact from fiction when he states, filmmakers are seen as entertainers and not journalists. There is little reason to think that media consumers neatly divide influential media sources into news, which is true, and entertainment, which is fiction. To back up the idea that the scenes were consciously neutralized, we can take a look at how the film was adapted from the book it is based on. In the book, Forrest is asked several times, "What did you think of the war in Vietnam?" His response to this question was always, "I think it is shit." If you contrast that to how the exact same question is handled in the film, Forrest is silenced and you are left wanting to know the character's point of view on the war. Let's take a look at the scene where Forrest gets silenced.
Well, there was only one thing I could say about the war in Vietnam. Well, there's only one thing I could say about the war in Vietnam. In Vietnam, you're...
This one! Give me that! That's it!
That's all I have to say about that.
So, to conclude, for the success of the film it had to remain politically neutral. It is my belief that the film was impartial about historical events made in the film. It is left open to interpretation. A film that is designed to attract and entertain viewers does not want to anger half of the audience. But there is a space for films to show the truth of an event. It is important to understand how the movie is received. How a film is received can show how the viewing audience is feeling at any given point in time, as the perception of the audience can also change over time. The same film in one era can be read to mean different things to an audience of a different era. Chris Beasley, 2019, has this to say. Going to the movies and mulling over power and politics are usually understood to be mutually exclusive activities. They are part of the cultural and political landscape that both constructs and reflects social life. Movies and politics are in fact deeply enmeshed. This is being proved more than ever, with shows, actors, comedians and films being cancelled for having a particular style or view, which at the time seemed harmless. I will finish with this key message from Adkins and Castle, 2014, that state that politics in film is very important. They say, in an age where the biases on network news and talk radio programs are accepted as fact amongst the populace, and citizens are increasingly sorting their media consumption based on their political predispositions, the movie theatre may prove to be the one last source of countercutting exposure to political messages.